Hello and welcome, readers, listeners, and viewers from across America and around the world. I am your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed here on Truth Frequency Radio. As always, it's a great honor and a pleasure to have your company and to join you in this platform and to seek out all things esoteric. I'm joined by my son this night and Zack Mason. Actually, I'm not sure if Justin's coming on or not, but he is, of course, running the show in the background. But Zack Mason joins us again, and he has written a book on Revelation. And for those of you that have been following our Revelation studies, that was what we were going to do tonight, but we thought we would invite Zack on to talk about the occurrences here in Ukraine with Russia invading. It's, I believe, in the 8th day now. And the Ukrainian people, God bless them, have been holding out. But there's a lot of war crimes going on there, and civilian infrastructure, and people are being attacked, and reports of women being raped and children being killed. It's not a good thing, but I do pray that they can hold out, and it certainly looks like they are giving the Russian people and the invading forces at least a bloody nose and something to contend with. They're not just rolling over and allowing them to come in and do what they want. But Zack, are you there, brother?
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me on, Zen.
Oh yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it, and really appreciate your work and your studies as well in Revelation, and appreciate your friendship as well, and looking forward to getting a little bit of insight as far as how you interpret the signs in the season and what's going on. With the escalations, certainly seems that the dominoes are starting to fall, and that even China with Taiwan and all of that, it seems to be part of what could be coming. But um, how do you feel about what's going on in Ukraine? And uh, you know, oh, also before you do, Zack, if you would mention the books that you've written, where people can go to find and support your work and reach you as far as your social media contacts.
Sure. Okay. Well, yeah, I think the most pertinent book I've written that people would care about this time is Revelation Unfolding, which I published about a year and a half ago, and it was a attempt to connect prophecy to current events. I've been watching both, studying prophecy for about 30 years, and also studying current events very closely, just waiting for a time when I thought I might hopefully to see them lining up. And I didn't really see anything. There was all kinds of theories out there, but 2015 is the first time I started to see what I believe were current events lining up with Scripture. So that's when I began writing the book and put it out about a year and a half ago after God pressed me to. And it's been kind of a crazy new era of discovery since then, since I've been discovering a lot of dreams and visions that Christians have been having. I've also written a book on called The Gospel According to Nature, which is basically an examination of all the different elements of creation and all the details and what God may be communicating to us symbolically through nature. I approach it in a very scientific way, trying to actually understand what he's trying to teach us spiritually. Then go back, connect that to the Bible, confirm that we're on the right track. It's a pretty neat book. That one's called The Gospel According to Nature. And the rest of what I've done is novels that are also pretty entertaining, but that's a different kind of category, right?
Mm-hmm.
My YouTube is basically the number one place people can reach for me. I put videos on there, doing different various series. I'm doing a series on God's law, but I'm also doing a verse by verse commentary on the book of Revelation, trying to make it simple and easy to understand. We call that series Understanding Revelation. And then videos I do connecting current events to prophecy, we call Revelation Unfolding on that channel as well.
Nice. And also you had made mention that you do keep up with and inform people on the dreams and visions and prophecies that people are sharing from the different parts of the world as well. And so that, I'm guessing, is also on your YouTube channel. Is there a specific website for that?
Yes, that's on my YouTube channel. I've got, not only do I discuss them, I do some commentaries on some interpretations of some, like a lot of your listeners may be aware of Pastor Dana Coverstone, who
Oh
seems to be
yeah.
having a lot of dreams from God. I've done, and I do believe his dreams are from God. I really do. After analyzing them, some of the interpretations though he provides are not spot on. He's got a lady that comes on there and named Sheree Goff that does interpretations, but they're usually, I don't know, they're mostly on, but there's always some very important things I feel like they're missing. So when I think it's important, I try to do a more detailed interpretation of it. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, what have you seen or heard, or what's been kind of coming forward with regard to dreams and visions, and
Sure.
in the most recent time?
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, so here's my source. One, I try to approach things scientifically. I know when it comes to dreams and visions, usually people go one of two ways. They either go kind of very, they're very free with it, and they just want to listen to and believe pretty much anything anybody says. And then the other side, they're skeptics who are really unwilling to look at them all at all, or talk about them at all. My approach is, I'm trying to approach it scientific. I want to know, is God speaking? And if he's speaking, I want to know what he's saying.
Right.
So I'm taking, my approach with the dreams and visions, because I became aware of this phenomenon about a year and a half ago, like I said, is I ignore any major prophets, teachers, anybody that's got any kind of following. I'm really focused on the average everyday Christians that are having dreams and are kind of waking up saying, man, I just had the most vivid dream, scared the what out of me. And they're telling you about it. And so I think I don't know if I've officially watched 1,000 dreams yet, but it's close. And it's a lot of material I've gone through. And there's just really common theme. I mean, there's about 12 themes that Christians are seeing over and over again. And they all see a little bit different. God communicates to everybody a little different in their own style, according to their personality. Some dreams are very symbolic and are very meaningful just to that person. I don't really take those as firm data because it's so hard to be confident in exactly what's being said there. Others are very literal. People are just seeing scenes from the future, or what they think are scenes from the future. And then others are kind of a hybrid of seeing the future mixed with some very clear symbolism. So but they're all seeing a little bit different details. When you put them all together, you get a very clear picture of, I think, what is coming. I've done compilations of those on my channel, my YouTube channel. So if anybody wants to go look at them, they can. I think the most pertinent ones are the ones I call phase 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the red horseman. But right now, they probably should also be looking at the black horseman, in my opinion. And what I've also seen from these is that to back up a little bit, before I discovered that this was happening, which, by the way, matches scripture, because in Joel 2 and then again in Acts, we have a prophecy that says in the last days, God's going to pour out his spirit and all kinds of his people are going to have dreams and visions. So this is a prophecy, so it should be something we're expecting. But before I knew about the phenomena, my approach was I was just looking at scripture saying, what does it say? I want to limit myself to what it says. I don't want to just try to paste my theory in to improve what I believe through scripture. I want to understand what it really is trying to tell us. So doing that, I noticed that, one, as I did that, my mind, I got outside of typical American evangelical prophecy teaching about the revived Roman Empire and things like that, and I was open to other possibilities. And that's when I first started considering, is the Bible actually teaching that the Antichrist could be from Turkey and going to build an Islamic caliphate. And in the end, I concluded I do believe that what it's teaching. And I saw in my book, Revelation Unfolding, I make my case that I believe that the current president of Turkey could very well be the little horn, and why. So as I was seeing that, I realized, well, okay, if the white horseman may already be moving, then what about the red horseman? Because that's the next thing in Revelation. So, but there's another key chapter that I had never really heard a lot of teachers talk about with these horsemen, which was Zechariah 6. And Zechariah saw the exact same 4 horses, same colors. But his position is different. His vision, it looks like he was outside of God's temple, outside of his throne room, whereas the Apostle John in Revelation is inside God's throne room. So John is he's seeing what order these horsemen are actually released, and he's hearing what they do. But he's not, but he doesn't see where they go. Zechariah is sitting outside the temple, so he sees them come out, but they're in a different order when they come out. But he doesn't hear what they do because he's not inside. All he knows is what direction they went, and he sees what directions they all went. But the order is almost the same. He sees the red, the black, and the pale horses in the same order, but the white horse is in a different order. The white horse is third in Zechariah's vision, coming out of God's temple. So if you put those two together, what I concluded is, I think what that tells us is that the white horse is moving slower, and that the other horses are riding faster. So that would tell me that we should see evident, like the whole world is going to become aware of the red horseman first. And I do believe that is what we're seeing in Ukraine. So for a long time, I've been predicting a war between China and the United States, and that again was based on Zechariah 6 alone, because in that chapter, Zechariah says that the strong horses, meaning the red horses, went to the ends of the earth, and that would be as far away from Israel as you can get, which would be the extremities. So that'd be the Americas, China, etc. And I was looking for not just war, but increasing anger and violence, because the Revelation 6 says that the red horseman is given the power to make men kill one another. So I was looking for that. But then I discovered these dreams, and the dreams not only confirmed the detail, my understanding of Scripture of where these horsemen were going to go in the world, but they added a lot of details. And that's when I first became aware that Russia was involved. For example, there are just statistics. I've tried to do a kind of analysis, try to predict how many Americans I think have had this dream, because every single time I teach a group of Christians, somebody in the group has had a dream about Russian or Chinese soldiers invading the United States. Mm-hmm. And so I just try to kind of figure out what does that mean statistically? If I extrapolate that across the United States, that I feel like it has to be at least 100,000 Christians have had that dream. I mean, my own 5-year-old daughter had a dream like that, and she has no idea about any of this. Mm-hmm. You know, because I haven't been talking to her about it in front of her.
Right.
Okay, so that's a huge body of data, body of dreams. But I was looking for this, looking for the anger, and we see that boiling. I've been expecting this to come for a long time, but there is a body of dreams on Ukraine specifically, and I've been there's a class I teach on Revelation. Well, we just finished it up actually and started something new, but been teaching for about 8 months, going through Revelation with a group of believers, and we came back last night, and they said, "You said this was going to happen," and I said, "Yes, I did." And my source of intelligence is the dreams. Uh-huh. I warned them it was going to happen, and yes, I believe Taiwan is coming next, because that is what has been seen. But the dreams saw Ukraine being invaded. They saw the tactics that Russia is using. There's I've got on my YouTube channel on the latest video. One of the links I put in the description, I think, is a dream you can click and watch, where he saw the Russian soldiers raping women in the villages systematically, and he posted that like a month ago.
Wow.
Long before any of this. So,
Yeah.
and all of these streams have been posted a while ago, right? So all of this stuff had been seen, and I told them, and I told them even to the point I said, look, based on what I'm seeing, all the dreams, the body of dreams, how I see anger going, politics, you put it all together. You put scripture, current events, and the dreams together, and I was able to tell them, I think I told them this like 4 weeks ago, I think Russia's going to invade Ukraine, and it's going to be done sometime after the Olympics. He's going to start after the Olympics, but before March 15th. And sure enough, he did.
Mm-hmm.
That was just based on my data. But now you get more. Since then, I discovered a woman that posted back in January, and she saw it happen to the day. Like she named the week that it was going to happen because God had revealed that to her, and she was spot on.
Was she Ukrainian, or the
Nope.
people that you're talking about, are any of them, or where are they from?
No, she's
just,
American.
Just for an idea, American.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and here's what I would say is, when I talk about these dreams as data, I'm like looking at the number of dreams for me is important, because, and I call that the body of data, the body of dreams. So with the Russia-China invasion, there's so many. It's just incredible, the number. And you can find a ton on anything to do with the United States or the English-speaking world, but there's really not that many. There's a good little body of dreams and visions people have been having about Ukraine, but not nearly as many. And I think the reason for that is just simply that those dreams were probably given mostly to Ukrainians, right? Because they're the ones that God is going to need to warn, right. And that's primarily the reason he's giving these dreams to Christians, is to warn them so they can prepare.
Yes. Well, certainly, please continue, and definitely, I think this is something that people should be looking into and examining, and so I'm really glad that you are doing that and making this information available for all of us, because I think God has always spoken to the prophets through visions and dreams, and
That's
even
right.
says in scripture that he will do nothing without warning the prophets first and letting them know, and in that way, because they are the trumpet blowers, and the as far as the watchmen and the watchwomen on the wall, that this is the way that he relates to all of us as to what's coming, in my opinion.
That's right. Yep. And initially, and I have not seen any dreams that give a clear finality to the war. Like I haven't seen any that say clearly how this particular conflict in Ukraine ends. Does Ukraine kind of resist for a while and end up calling a draw of some sorts, or do they lose completely? But what has been seen is that Russia doesn't stop with Ukraine, that they go after a number of other countries. They isolate them through cyber warfare for a time. And one guy says he had a vision where he saw, and I only repeat, even though it's just one dream, I only repeat it because I've seen his dreams come true on other things. But he saw Russia basically taking most of Europe, including France.
Wow.
And that doesn't really surprise me, but not the UK. He will not take the UK. And the reason I know that is because all the thousands of dreams about the Russia-China invasion of the United States the same day they invade us, they also simultaneously invade Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and UK. Like they invade the entire English-speaking world the same day.
Wow.
So that means that UK should not fall before then. And with however it turns out in Ukraine, I don't know if this government will be toppled and replaced with one friendly to Putin, or if Zelensky's government will just say, "Fine, we'll do whatever you want, Putin." But it's going to be one of those two, because when Russia and China invade us, it's not just them. There are a total of 37 countries that come to invade us, is what some have seen, and Ukraine is one of those countries.
Wow. Well, yeah, that's a interesting setup and scenario. What do you think currently, as far as with what's happening in Ukraine, an idea or a feel for, what may be next, and especially according to your dreams, you're saying 37 countries, and then Putin also escalating across Europe. Well, I'm guessing then that would force NATO to take a stand, and supposedly they have already kind of set a perimeter, outside of Ukraine, because they say that they're not being part of the European Union or the NATO alliance yet, that they won't put soldiers on the ground there.
So, okay, so multiple things to talk about there. One, if you just having studied Putin for so long, anybody that studied him know that he's not stupid. He's a chess player. He is evil. He doesn't hesitate to just kill his political opponents. And I don't think that
black belt too, in martial arts or judo or something. Yeah.
Right.
He's not a warrior mentality.
Right. He's not scared of Western media or the Western propaganda or any of those things. He's just really not. He really could care less. And in the first days of this war, it was almost like the West was like, first of all these stories coming out. I would urge your listeners to always be careful listening to stories, because I know my son came in, he was so happy every day, the Ukrainians are winning this, they just blew up this Russian convoy. Putin, they're saying Putin is so frustrated because they're not going as fast as he wanted, et cetera, et cetera. It was seemed like Russia was just completely failing and completely underestimated Ukraine. And yes, the Ukrainians are fighting hard, and it's admirable what they're doing and trying to do. But most of those stories you're hearing are CIA propaganda. And our people just still haven't figured that out. That the stories you hear in the media about anything important are propaganda from Western intelligence sources. You'd think we would have learned it with the jab, with the latest pandemic that came out, with the Russia-Trump collusion, with the election fraud, all of these things. You'd think we have learned that the mainstream media isn't going to tell us the truth, right? And they're being fed directly from the CIA news stories. And so the CIA, basically our intelligence services and other Western intelligence services, this is what they do. They feed their pet reporters stories. The pet reporter feels solid, like, I've got a scoop. This came from the CIA, so it must be true. And they report it, and that's their source. And it's just made up. And now some of the stuff you're seeing on social, a lot of, Ukrainian destroying the Russian convoy, if you're seeing the video, that's probably true. But it's just one convoy. What about everything else that's happening, right? You can't, that stuff is anecdotal. And when you hear stories like Putin is frustrated, do we really believe that his generals in a time of war are leaking Putin's feelings to the media?
Right.
Does that make any sense? There's no way that's happening. Okay. Right. That is just our intelligence services trying to boost morale, encourage, etc. And Putin doesn't care. He's ignoring it. Okay. Because his plan is real simple. It's just a plan of brutal force just a massive strength. He's just slowly moving all of his forces more and more into the country, and he's just smashing it. And he does not care how many civilians die. He doesn't care how many women get raped. Right now, they are bombing the largest nuclear power plant in Europe, in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. And they are clearly trying to provoke a nuclear meltdown.
Yeah.
And, Zelensky, everybody's calling him to stop it, but they're not going to stop it.
Sure. Hold on, Zach. Sure. We'll be right back, everyone.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased, as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com. Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures.
Hello friends, thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
And in those days, there were giants in the land, and the sons of the angels of God looked upon the daughters of men and found them fair, and took of them wives, and their sons became of old great men of renown. So they have been mixing with us on a genetic level since the time of Enoch and Ezekiel's will.
Here on Earth we're intrigued by the sun, moon, and stars, and imagine there's got to be planets like ours. So conceive of a face on the surface of Mars, so in need of a meaning and purpose we've lost. And indeed they believe that these might be our gods, or that maybe with time we'll do right and evolve, and eventually reach what they seek, and then solve all the problems of man. But they really don't know that they call it a world works of our hands are but just filthy rags. So we travel the lands to dig up our past. Time elapses and with it are much of the facts. Some imagine that gods came in alien class. They react in this way, they're so desperate for.
All right, welcome back everybody for our second portion. I'll turn it back over to you here in just a second, Zach. But I did just want to mention a few of the things that I had seen in regard to just some news events. It says supposedly that there's been a lot of success as far as Ukraine being able to destroy certain convoys with the drones, and that's really good because it doesn't put anybody, any personnel, any people, in danger. And that, I don't know if this is true or not, that supposedly, Russian soldiers are being abandoned without food or fuel, and that a lot of vehicles are just being found, left with no soldiers personnel. But
yeah, some of that, like the abandoned vehicles, unless you get strong, I'd say that's the kind of story that's a propaganda story. The other side does propaganda too. Yes, Ukrainians are having successes, partly because there's two reasons. But if you really pay attention to the details, you understand what may be happening. Because, for example, a few days ago or nights ago, I think 4 or 5 nights ago, they were talking about how Russia was going after the second largest city, and then the Ukrainians fought them off. But then if you read the details, you find out that they didn't even come in with tanks, that it was just a few light armored vehicles that came in that got fought off. So it wasn't really the full force. And that sounds more like some officer who wants some glory and is seeing if he can do an amazing feat by himself without waiting on the rest of the army. And Putin is not moving fast. He's moving slow and methodical. He's just bringing in amassed forces. What you don't read about, don't see splashed everywhere, is that the Ukrainian army, the large majority of it is in eastern Ukraine, and Putin is not really going after Kiev. He's cutting off that army. He's working to cut it off from its supply lines. And he took the third largest city in Ukraine yesterday, or it was the fourth, and now he's going after Odessa. He's bombing this nuclear plant, which tells you he's got no scruples.
Right.
And that's the thing. He's bombing civilians. He's throwing rockets into apartment buildings. He doesn't care. They practice first of all, they're very harsh with their own soldiers. And he doesn't care about quote unquote war crimes.
Right.
The Russian military strategy is escalate to de-escalate is what it's called. And he's just going to keep ratcheting it up. And he is very willing to launch nuclear weapons at whoever he has to, because in his mind, he either wins this or he's dead. Mm-hmm. And there's no way his ego or his self-preservation will let him back off now. Right. So he's going to do whatever he has to keep it going. But that's him. And now there is one encouraging thing about that. One dream, or this may have been a vision. I think this was a vision they had. And this person said that they saw Putin's plan was to nuke every city in Ukraine, every major city. But then they saw Jesus step in, and Jesus was very angry about that, and he was intervening to stop it. Like Jesus was not going to allow that. So, God is very much involved, and he is still in control. And Jesus is not going to allow things to get past what he is willing to allow based on where we are in the time frame, right? You asked about American soldiers. One dream that was posted back in January saw American soldiers in Poland fighting Belarusian and Russian soldiers. And another person has seen that this kind of turns into a small local world war, limited, not global yet. It's not time for that. But
Yeah, mercenaries.
yes. But basically, I mean, the way I started the last video I posted on my channel was, welcome to Revelation chapter 6.
Right, right.
We're not studying anymore. We're living it. We're at the very beginning of it. And I know some of your listeners may have questions like, well, what about this? What about that? What about the rapture is in people's mind? And one thing I've tried to teach over and over again is we're in Revelation chapter 6. The rapture is in chapter 14:14. It's in Revelation 14:14. You can go look there, you'll see it. That's 8 chapters from now. We have a lot of time to get through to get there.
Right.
The other thing people might confuse is they start to wonder, is Putin the Antichrist? And I would say no, he's not, because, and neither is President Xi, because they're part of the red horsemen, and the white horseman is different. It's a different entity, right? So right now we're just in this phase of the red horseman rising, in my opinion. And last week was the first time I saw signs of the black horseman. And my personal expectations is we're going to start to see the pale horseman in Africa this summer. Sometime this summer is what I'm expecting anyways.
Can you, for those that have not listened to the shows before, may not be familiar with your work, can you review a little bit as far as the horsemen and how they are playing into the times and what you see as far as the escalation with that?
Okay, well, let me just kind of read through the text here real quick. It says,
Sure.
I looked and behold a white horse. He who sat on it had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out conquering and to conquer. That's when the first seal is broken. And every scholar I know of understands that to be the arrival of the Antichrist on the world scene, beginning to build his kingdom. Now, he does not mean he's fully revealed to the world, but he's beginning to work. And, we've talked before about Erdogan a lot, but we're not really talking about that tonight. But he has begun doing a lot of things. This is when he opened the second seal. I heard the second living creature saying, come and see. Another horse, fiery red, went out, and it was granted to the one who sat on it to take peace from the earth, and that people should kill one another. And there was given to him a great sword. So war, World War III, violence, anger, even neighbor killing neighbor. When he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, come and see. So I looked, and behold, a black horse, and he who sat on it had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 living creatures saying, a quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, but do not harm the oil and the wine. I'm going to come back to that in a second. When he opened the 4th seal, I heard the voice of a 4th living creature saying, come and see. So I looked, and behold, a pale horse. And the name of him who sat on it was Death, and Hades followed with him. And power was given to them, meaning to each of the horsemen, over a fourth of the earth, to kill with sword, with hunger, with death, and by beasts of the earth. So each of the horsemen is given power over a different part of the earth, a different territory of the earth. Zechariah saw both the white and the black horsemen went north. So that through a lot of, which I don't have time in this brief time we have here to go through all my reasoning, but I basically come to the conclusion that I believe the white horse is the formation of the Islamic Caliphate. And I have a lot of scripture to support that, which is Turkey, Iran, Iraq. All of those are north of Israel in the Bible. But then the black horseman, I believed, would go to Europe, which is also north of Israel. Zechariah saw the pale horse going south, which would be Africa, and the red horse went to the ends of the earth, which we already mentioned. China, the Americas, Asia, Russia is at the far north. Even South Africa and Australia and New Zealand are exploding with violence because there's so much anger. So we're seeing the exact impact of this red horseman in the places we would expect it. And now in my book, I had done an analysis because specifically in the black horseman, it says that the price of wheat specifically skyrockets. And if you do the math. A denarius is a day's wages. A quart of wheat is a certain measurement that is about a liter worth. If you really do a precise analysis, and it works out to be a loaf of bread is going to cost about $200 wherever this horse hits, and that's it's basically going to take a man working an entire day to earn enough money to get a loaf of bread for his family. So in that kind of scenario, a family is not going to be able to afford much else. Not electricity, not rent, nothing. So
they also made mention that Ukraine and Russia are the two places where the largest or the most wheat is grown.
Yes, and I was getting to that because when I wrote the book, I was just looking at where is the wheat grown in the world, and I saw that both the United States and China and India are basically the largest producers of wheat. So in the book, I had said, I think that wheat is going to become so expensive because if this World War III is going on between Russia and the United States and China, then wheat's going to be not available anymore, and it'll skyrocket. And the other key part that tells us that the Black Horseman is going to impact Europe is it says, do not harm the oil and the wine, and oil is olive oil. Well, 80 to 90% of the world's olive oil and wine are grown are produced in Europe. So in Western Europe. So, or around the Mediterranean. So these wars would not impact that, and that is why the Black Horseman impacts what it does. But then, just the other day, I did not connect the dots when I wrote my book about Ukraine being the breadbasket of Europe, and they are. Yes. And that's last week, I started seeing articles, especially on ZeroHedge.com, talking about how the price of wheat was going to be skyrocketing now that Ukraine's wheat supply was being cut off from the world. And so I went and bought some wheat futures, and I made a lot of money on them today.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And that's what I figured was going to happen. And if this is the black horse riding, then he's going to keep going, and that kind of, and it won't just be wheat. There's going to be other, oil as well. Other commodities are going to be, the basic commodities are going to be stretched. And another factor in this is Russia produces 40% of the world's fertilizer. And fertilizer is already very expensive. And he just closed that down. A few weeks ago, he prohibited the further export of fertilizer to the rest of the world. So I have a friend who owns a landscaping company. He said that a bag of fertilizer last year was $2, and now it's $15.
Wow, that's quite a bit of increase there.
Yes, and the farmers, as a result, what farmers are doing, even in this country, is corn and wheat are going to be too expensive because they need too much fertilizer to grow them. So a lot of them are switching to soybeans. But that's going to produce a huge shortage.
Right. Yeah, definitely a lot of things are going to be shaken up. And then, we had talked about this in the last show about how the government is paying farmers to destroy their crops, and and that is also part of what we are seeing as far as the shortages and the supply chain, how so many things are not even coming through because of that. Can you comment on those two things really quick?
So, there's a lot of, I haven't spent a lot of time studying exactly what's going on with agriculture in this country. I have heard the same stories. I've heard both, read some online articles about it. I've also heard anecdotally from friends connected to it, what's going on. But the cost of fertilizer is a big problem. There was, at least over the past year, significant number of crops and even cattle that the government was basically paying or ordering to be destroyed for various reasons. And you have to ask yourself why. And really, it just comes down to there's corrupt politicians in the West, and they are intent on knocking the United States down and causing problems. And even this war in Ukraine is really because of that. Because Putin has ambitions, and he wants to have status and regrow the Soviet Union, so to speak. But ultimately, the Biden administration provoked this war. They intentionally provoked it. They kept sending more and more advanced weapon systems to Ukraine, and Russia kept saying, you guys stop it, or we're going to do something. And we wouldn't stop. We kept doing it. And, you think, well, that's not an excuse for Putin to do that. And I agree. Morally, under God's law, it's not an excuse. But you can kind of see how he would feel about it, given how we reacted when Russia put missiles in Cuba.
Right.
Back in the 60s.
Right.
And they're feeling the same thing. So we knew what we were doing when we did it, and we did it, and we provoked this.
Yeah. Doesn't it seem odd to you that, the Americans and even Biden in his speech, he kind of said, there's only sanctions, and if you only have a minor incursion, well, we're not even going to, really even do anything about that. It's like he was okaying Putin to, well, go ahead and, we're not going to put any troops in the ground to stop you guys. If you want to take Ukraine, go ahead, but don't go any further.
And that's kind of the thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of the thing is if you really pay attention to the details of the articles, don't read the headline, read the details. And like China, supposedly under pressure from the West, China cut off all banking and loans to Russia. But then you read the fine print and it says, except for when it's approved by higher level bank executives. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, right.
And then
so that did absolutely nothing.
Yeah. We're putting all these sanctions on Russia, except they're not going to take effect for several weeks or months. Hey, we're cutting Russia off from the SWIFT banking system completely, and then Germany says, well, we're kind of doing that, but right now we're trying to work out a plan to figure out how we just cut off SWIFT from the right people in Russia and not all of them. And it's like, okay, and then we're buying. I think what I heard 2 days ago was I think the United States is buying $70 million that day in oil from Russia.
And oil, right? Yeah, exactly.
And we could just open up our own pipeline.
Right.
So, it's not what you read in the news. There are things going. There's even a rumor that said that the Biden administration sent word to Russia that there wouldn't be any consequences.
Right. Yeah. I wanted to ask you another question as well too, and I don't know a lot about this, but a lot of people do talk about and speculate on how Biden and his son Hunter, how they had connections with Ukraine previously, and how that also is affecting, the headlines and what's going on there, and we don't understand and know about that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, sure. Ukraine was a clearinghouse for Western politicians and other corrupt people around the world to launder money, right? Ukraine is a center for that. And there's all kinds of corruption and dirty deals there. And the Biden family was directly involved in it. That was part of why they impeached Trump, because Trump asked Ukraine to investigate Biden's corruption there. And so they said they started panicking, and that's why they impeached him over it, because he was going to pull out a lot of dirty laundry. And it wasn't just him, because who else? Hunter Biden was famous for being on the board of the company Burisma, right?
Right.
Guess who else had somebody on that board? Mitt Romney.
Yeah,
Mitt Romney, one of his primary aides, main aides, was on the board as well, which means Mitt Romney's corrupt. And suddenly his opposition to Trump makes a lot more sense, and you can no longer consider him a kind of honest voice of protest. He's not. He's corrupt. And he was acting to protect his corruption. So Ukraine is definitely a center of that. But Putin has to have all of this information anyways, I mean, already. And this is partly why the West response so far is weak, because he'll release it. You know, if we get, he'll do anything. I mean, you have no idea. I mean, we have no idea what, he just doesn't have, Putin doesn't have a limit. The West thinks that they're controlling him to some degree, but he's not controllable, and neither is China. We think our politicians think they're still in control, and they're really not.
Right. Fascinating. But please, continue on.
Okay. Well, anyways, I think we were talking about the Black Horseman and just what we were seeing there. So I think, you know, what we'll probably be seeing next is, my understanding is that March, now I'm going to be careful. I'm relying on data, and a lot of the data is these dreams and visions, and it is hard to predict timelines. So when I say I'm expecting something, it's really just a very educated guess. Okay, I'm doing my best to order things to take the whole body and kind of make it all fit like a puzzle. And when I do that, I am expecting China to go after Taiwan next. And I think that would greatly complicate matters, because now it's no longer just about the West against Russia. Now all of a sudden China has to be put back in a box too.
Yeah, two fronts.
You know, what are we going to do then?
Right.
You know, how do you, so you either start World War III or you let them have it.
Right.
And there's dreams that have seen China. I believe that what's going to happen is China is going to create an Asian empire of 12 different Asian nations, and they'll obviously be the leader of it. But Taiwan will be first, and I think over the next years we're going to see them just consolidating. I don't think they're coming after us yet. I think the first thing we have to worry about is a financial collapse. I think that's also coming soon. Yeah,
I agree.
So
we're way past, where we should be as far as bankruptcy. I mean, $30 trillion in debt? I mean, it's ridiculous.
Right. So I would say, I believe something big is going to happen. I think there's going to be some explosive things happening with regards to violence, these wars over the course of March. Okay. And I'm fairly confident things are going to escalate, and people are going to be shocked by how far it escalates, but I won't say I'm absolutely sure about that. April, I'm feeling like 50% sure that April is going to be the month we may have a financial collapse, but I'm not convinced of that, but that's my best guess right now. September, I'm believing, is going to be a very bad month later this year. But mainly what we have to worry about, really your listeners, what they need to be doing is, one, prepare spiritually. Pursue the habits that you need to pursue to get spiritually strong. And the first of those is committing to make Christ the center of your life from this day forward. Not just an aspect of your life, but the center of your life. They need to begin increasing obedience. The reason these judgments are coming is because we're all so disobedient.
Right.
Get in a prayer habit, get in a Bible reading habit, get in a community of other believers, fellowship habit, and then begin relying on God's power to increase your obedience daily. That's what we need to be doing spiritually. Physically, I just know I have a guy in my Revelation study came in one day and he said, Zach, he said, I had this very weird dream. I don't remember everything that happened, but like Biden was sitting in a stand of politicians and he was like sleeping. And then this voice behind me said, "It is coming and you are not prepared."
Right.
And he said, "What do you mean? What is coming?" And the voice repeated, "It is coming and you are not prepared. And he said, well, I've got a month worth of food stored up. And the voice said, that is not nearly enough.
Right.
And, about a month later, one of the managers of one of my businesses told me she had a dream. And I said, what was it? She said, well, it was just more of a voice. And the voice just was like in my ear, and it just said, it is coming. So lots of people are hearing that phrase. Lots of people are hearing the phrase, brace yourself, as you see in the Coverstone Dreams. And we still have time to get ready.
All right, we'll be right back for second hour, everyone.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com. Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures.
Hello friends, thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
All right, welcome back, everybody, for a second hour. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. I'm joined by my good friend and special guest this evening, Zack Mason. We're talking about his book, Revelation Unraveled, as well as the end times, the horsemen, and what's going on in Ukraine. There is a question from the chat room, Zack, before I
Sure.
turn it back over to you. People are asking as to how much food you recommend that they put aside and try to stock up and gather.
Generally, every time I've seen a dream or a vision where somebody has heard from God, it's always been between 6 to 8 months. 6 to 8 months seems to be the number, and obviously you need to store up food not only for yourself but for loved ones that maybe aren't as prepared, that are going to want to come to your house, and you need to store
Absolutely.
up things that don't expire. Canned fruits and vegetables is a really easy one because that doesn't go bad, and you can get vitamin C out of that, of course, and things like that. You think of things like powdered milk. That's something people don't think of a lot of the time. Of course, there's these companies that are like prepper food companies that'll sell whole meal packages, but that stuff can take up a lot of room, and it may not last as long. If you have a place in your community that sells like raw wheat, like unmilled wheat, that could be a really good thing to store up along with olive oil and honey. With those three things, you can make a really and you can get a little hand mill to mill it, or even an electric mill. You can make really delicious loaves of bread with that, and that's probably a good, especially if wheat's going to become so expensive. That's going to be that would be a good source of food.
Okay, awesome. All right, I appreciate it, and then I'll turn it back over to you, brother.
Okay. Well, and one more comment on that is I think that the time when we're most going to need those supplies is during what I call phase 3. So what Christians are seeing is different. What seem to be different phases of the Red Horseman in America. So all this stuff happened in Europe. In Asia. I do believe our soldiers are probably going to be engaged in that in a limited capacity. But I'm not expecting it to blow up into like a full-blown world war with the draft and all of that stuff. I think it's going to be limited, and our soldiers aren't going to do very well, mainly because they're undersupplied and undermanned. We don't send enough. Like the dreams that have seen us fighting in Taiwan have seen that we don't send enough Marines compared to the Chinese forces, and our Marines don't have any tanks. We don't give them any tanks, and other things like that. So while all that's going on, we may be involved in a limited way. What seems to be going to happen here is a period first of violence and chaos, where just the kind of stuff that's been going on in the urban cities over the past few years is going to accelerate and just really grow. It's just going to expand out into the suburbs, and neighbor's going to be hating neighbor. And at some point, it seems that the United States dissolves politically and legally, which sounds crazy. It sounds like, how would that happen? But there's a key dream that Dana Coverstone had called the Lincoln Dream, and I do a commentary on that, an interpretation of that on my channel. And it seems to, and in that dream, you see that basically everybody wants the United States to end, the Union to end, both sides, right and left. And this division seems to be driven actually more from the right-hand side than the left. But the left is in full agreement. And what it looks like they're trying to do is basically divide into two countries, blue states and red states. And you already hear talk of that. Like, I've been predicting that for more than a year, that would happen. And these phase 2 dreams have seen us devolve into a full-blown civil war. There's a lot of dreams about that. But people have said that was crazy. But then guess what? Just a few months ago, you started having a few representatives in Congress start tweeting about how they thought it was time for a national divorce. And what they meant is an actual national divorce. And some liberals picked, it was a conservative, Marjorie Holmes, I believe, is the first one that started saying that from the right. And then soon after that, liberals picked up that she had said that, and they were agreeing with it.
Do you think that could be part of an agenda from, even higher up, like New World Order, the dissolvement, especially with the financial collapse coming, and a lot of talk of like some kind of reset?
Yeah, so to keep it simple, so we're getting the global elites, this Epstein network that everybody is so scared of, is they are the whore of Babylon. The whore of Babylon that's mentioned in the end of Revelation. They are the whore, and we can, if you want, in a little bit we can spend a lot more time analyzing that and understanding it.
Yeah,
but
that'd be great.
The United States is morphing right now. It's on a path going from what, it used to be that the United States was the best example in history of what God's people could be so far, as the church. Obviously, we're still imperfect because none of us are perfect. But in our past, we did reflect the bride of Christ. We were a visual representation of the bride of Christ, and we did a good job of it. But we are morphing now. As a country, we're becoming Babylon. We're becoming the whore. And at the very end of our country's history, we will almost fully be Babylon, and with very few Christians left. Does that make sense? And so the judgment in Revelation 18, where it says Babylon is destroyed in 1 hour,
right,
with fire. Yeah, that, if you read Revelation 17 and 18 carefully, you'll see that at first it seems like it's describing the whore, and it's like an amorphous entity. It's basically, she's the anti-church. Like, you have the devil in Revelation is basically against God, and then you have the evil trinity, the devil, the Antichrist, opposing Christ the Son, and the false prophet is basically the anti-Holy Spirit. And the whore is basically the anti-church. But if you pay attention to the language in 17, 18, it starts, especially by the time you get to 18, it starts talking about Babylon more like a country. In the beginning, it's talking about this whore is like a nebulous group of leaders. She's dressed in purple and scarlet, purple and red, and those are the colors of human leadership. So it's talking about her sitting on many waters, many nations, just like the church, not having any clearly defined boundaries. But by the time you get to 18, it's talking about Babylon much more like a specific country. The language is. And so that is my explanation, understanding for that shift, that basically as these horsemen progress, persecution begins, and that begins eliminating Christians. And then the mark of the beast, and you eliminate a lot of Christians with that, until the point where the only Americans left, or for the most part, are pagans that are part of the whore. And so America fully becomes Babylon, and then is destroyed in 1 hour.
Yeah.
So, right. So, but these global elites are not nearly as powerful as they think they are. They themselves are frustrated. They want to do more, and God thwarts them because He's not ready for them to do everything they want to do. Right. But ultimately, this civil war is part of the judgment of the United States. And I think that what we need to be, I'm assuming that a lot of your listeners, maybe not all, but a lot of them are probably would consider themselves on the conservative side of the political spectrum. And I would say that for Christians that are Bible-believing Christians, it's really easy to see the sin of the left side of the political aisle, because they support abortion.
Right.
They support gay marriage.
Right.
They support socialism. Those are very easy things to see. On the right, however, we have our own sins that we don't address. And if you really look honestly at the way most quote unquote conservative, even Christian Americans, the way they're acting and behaving, they're kind of arrogant and materialistic, and they don't take time to help their fellow man. They don't come across as compassionate. It's one thing to be pro security and want a secure border where you don't have illegals and cartels coming across, but on the conservative side of the aisle, the animus against illegal immigrants goes a little deeper than it should, because God says the three groups He cares about most are widows, orphans, and foreigners. And if we were, as conservative Christians, dedicated to caring about the things God cares about, we would be focused on the border for obvious reasons, but we would be out there loving the immigrants that were coming, no matter how they came, because that's what God calls us to do.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So there's a lot. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that in the scriptures too, especially the early patriarchs, there was always a provision for the traveler to be taken care of, to be offered meal, to be offered lodging, to have their feet washed and cleansed, and that kind of thing. And so, and that was a big thing that, especially like Abraham and the early patriarchs, they did that kind of thing. They provided those kind of services, but also spoke about and taught people about the majesty of the Godhead and help people to understand that. But there was, those provisions for travelers and taking care of them. And
yes, that's exactly right. And we're not doing that well. My main job, what I do besides my YouTube channel and writing books, is I lead a ministry called Path to Hope Ministries, and we mobilize believers and train them how to go out into the community and minister to people who are hurting and isolated, broken, that kind of thing.
That's awesome.
And I can tell you, it's a struggle to get people to do it, because they're busy with shopping, yard work, soccer matches for the kids, grandkids, you name it. Most Christians are unwilling to sacrifice their time for the kingdom. And not to mention, the God of both sides of the aisle these days is money. So,
Mammon.
So I would say that the sin of the right is there's a lot of self-righteousness, there's a lot of arrogance, there's a lot of materialism, and they don't see it. But there's going to come a time, I believe, when we're going to be talking in the news about dividing. And I think the method for this may be this constitutional convention that's being called, because 17 states have already approved the calling of a special constitutional convention. Nebraska just did it, and it is on the slate for the legislatures to vote on. I think it's another 20-something legislatures are voting on it this session. So if 34 states vote to call a constitutional convention, then according to the U.S. Constitution, we would call one, and all the states would come together, and it's a method where they can completely bypass Congress, and the federal government will have no say over it, and they can pass and do whatever they want. So it isn't hard to imagine that they could end up in that convention deciding, hey, let's do 2 countries now instead of 1, because we don't really want to be married anymore.
Who would be the representatives or the delegates for something like that?
I don't know the details of that. What they're voting on is a specific bill produced by a certain organization, and so I'm sure the language in that bill contains provisions for how these delegates will be appointed and that kind of thing, and how the convention will be conducted.
Okay.
But I don't know that for sure, because I haven't read the details of it. Regardless, and if that happens, I believe you're going to see a complete change. So many people have seen President Obama leading armies in a civil war in the United States. And then, of course, there's also this body of dreams you've probably heard about Trump coming back, about Trump being in the White House again. So I've been trying to piece all that together and figure out what's the right order. And I think what it is you're going to see I think you're going to see the division. And I think once the red states are free from the blue states, that they're going to enthusiastically reelect Trump, and that will be in the 2024 election.
Do you see
That's what I'm expecting. That's what I'm expecting
how
anyway.
that division plays out? I mean, because the blue states are so separated, like California, New York, in Washington, a lot of the, I guess, West Coast, are kind of blue and liberal, and then New York is definitely, a haven for liberalism. But how would that play out as far as the boundaries or the?
I don't know that. I haven't seen anything that's seen like the new map that way. I know that I do know that from not the dreams but the political realm, before the 2020 election, the Democrats were working a plan. They war gamed the election with John Podesta leading these war games, and actually, they were actually war gaming the election, right? And the end result was going to be that the Pacific states would secede from the Union and declare a civil war. That was their intention. So my guess is that it may just be those 3 states at first. I don't know. Yeah, and again, I want to repeat, I'm not claiming to be a prophet. I'm not claiming to have absolute knowledge of what's coming. I'm just making strong, educated guesses on what so many people have seen. But if what they've seen is right, then there's going to be this war, and that is probably the time when Trump would come back. A lot of people have seen him back in office, but when he does, it's like very different. Like they've heard God say things like he's going to do things that no one has been able to do before. And he's going to bring the nation back to Christ. And there's going to be a revival at that time that that will be a true revival, and America will become a city on the hill again. And so some people are looking at that, and they're very excited, of course, and I'm excited about that, if that were to come true. But when I connect it back to Scripture and I look closely, what I notice is that in Revelation 6, you have 6 seals that are being broken. Okay, the 4 horsemen, then martyrdoms and persecution, then the great earthquake. Then you move to Revelation chapter 7, and you have the sealing of the 144,000 that become missionaries around the world and begin spreading the gospel. So that is a revival. That's a moment of revival. And then the very first part of chapter 8 is where the 7th seal is broken. And when the 7th seal is broken, it releases the 7 trumpets, but before they begin to blow, it says that there was a silence in heaven for like half an hour, for about half an hour.
Mm-hmm.
John is not precise in the timing. And I've tried to calculate through various systems how long would half an hour be here on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
It's clearly a pause. It's a pause between the bad things that happen from the seals and the bad things that are coming from the trumpets. It's a pause to give time for the revival to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how long is that pause? My best guess is that it is somewhere between 6 months to about a year and 9 months. Not sure exactly how much, but it's definitely not 30 literal minutes, because we wouldn't notice that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I've got a video, my next video on my channel where I talk about Revelation 8. I'm going to go into the different calculations and why I landed on that, why those numbers. But I think what people are seeing with Trump and this revival and this phase in our history, I think, is probably corresponding to Revelation 7 and 8, to the beginning of 8. It's that pause.
I got a question for you again, really quickly.
Yeah.
Just in the, because a lot of people are thinking with this reset also that people should go back to the land, start being as subsistent as possible, learn to grow their own food, and also raise their own meats and that kind of thing, learn to create butter and cheese and all that. And I wanted to ask you, as far as how you see that playing out, and also the importance of community, and are you working towards bringing people together in that kind of manner, or establishing outreach?
Okay.
Just wanted to,
Yeah. So when you put together what everybody's seen, and you focus on the consistency of what they've seen after the Civil War period, there's this period of peace. Maybe it looks like Trump or whoever's in charge of the White House in the red states defeats, at least temporarily, I think, the forces of Obama. And then after that is when the 37 nations, Russia and China, are invited in by Obama and the Whore of Babylon to attack, because they don't want to leave Trump in power, whoever it is that's leading. I think it'll be Trump, but again, there's not enough dreams showing that for me to be sure about that part. The first thing Russia and China do, though, is they launch an EMP attack. They use hypersonic missiles to detonate nuclear weapons high above our airspace, which fries all of the electronic circuits in the country. Mm-hmm. And that is why people need to have 6 to 8 months worth of food stored up for that period.
Right.
The invasion happens after that, and it's very sudden. We're caught completely off guard. So these soldiers will be showing up at people's doorsteps before the news is even reporting it's happening. Mm-hmm. So what I'm understanding is that there's a couple of messages that God seems to be saying. In addition to storing up food, he's saying, get away from the cities.
Yeah.
If you do not let yourself be, continue to live in an urban area, you need to move into the country. And I would suggest 40 to 50 miles out, or maybe you don't move there, but maybe you either alone or you have some place ready where you can go to.
Right, right.
The Midwestern United States, my best understanding is that the Midwestern United States will be the last refuge.
All right, hold on. We'll be right back for a final segment, everyone.
Here's number 2 in the art of persuasion. Accurate facts. Accurate facts. We call it dealing in truth. Accuracy is very important. Here's why. It builds credibility. Credibility starts to weaken if you mess with the facts, the truth, the correct numbers. Now, everybody will give you room for what we call an unintentional error in dealing in facts. Now, see, if my watch says about 7:28, but if you were to ask me what time is it, and I was to say it's 7:30, you would allow me to be a couple of minutes off, right? If I said it was 7:30, but accurately, really, truthfully, it was 7:28, you would give me that error to just quickly say 7:30, right? You would say, you didn't mean to mess up my life, right? By leading me astray with this erroneous information that it was 7:30 when really it was only 7:28. Now, there are times and occasions when you may have to be precise, and it may be a life and death matter.
It's amazing how people have been raving about Aya Life all over.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased, as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com. Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
All right, welcome back, everybody, for final segment. Do want to return you back to that question, Zach, and just asking about community, because you live here where my children live in Lawrenceville, Georgia, and so I just
Yep.
wanted to see how you were facilitating that, because I think that's an important part of, what Christians should be doing, believers in this time is, at least making network, contacting that, maybe at some point barter and sharing, and just
Right.
it could be very important.
So, yes, to finish that thought, so basically, God seems to be, or sometimes Jesus is giving the similar message to many people in these dreams and visions. And one is store up this amount of food. Like when I first started meeting, talking to Christians about these things, and about a year and a half ago, half of them literally would tell, yeah, God was telling me I needed to store up food. So he's definitely been communicating that to people. Getting away from urban areas, having a place in the country you can retreat to, either something you own or something your family or friends own that you've got an agreement, you can go there. But you also need to have a way to get there, because if electrical circuits are fried, that might include your vehicle, right? So you got to take precautions on that. There's all kinds of ways to protect things from an EMP, so you might look into some of those methods. But on the community aspect, that is one of the main messages Jesus is saying, is that those who are in community, those who are abiding in him, who are connected to his body, will be protected. Those who are abiding in him well. So Christians who are not walking well. So what does that mean? Well, there's a lot of Christians who aren't even in church. I can't tell you how many Christians I talk to all the time that say, well, I don't need to go to church. Me and God, we're just fine. I worship on my own. I walk in the woods and worship him there. And what I say to those people is that, first of all, fellowship is one of the 3 non-negotiable habits in the Bible. New Testament tells us to never cease fellowshipping with other believers, to not forsake it. And it's pictured in the temple. There were 3 pieces of furniture, and they symbolize the 3 habits, the 3 ways we approach God and seek him. And the golden lampstand was the symbol for fellowship. It's one of the 3 basic habits we have to do for our own spiritual health. And I tell people a lot of times, I say, have you ever walked up to somebody and said, hey man, I really love you, but I just can't stand your wife? Okay. Or, you have a great looking face or head, but I hate your body. Okay. That's exactly what people who don't want anything to do with the church, and by church I mean, the body of Christ, they're trying to do Christianity on their own and as not part of the body. But if you're not part of the body, you're not connected to Christ, period. Right? You can't be connected to him apart from the body. But it's also, so being in prayer, being in the Bible regularly, being in community is super important, but also being obedient. If you're increasing your obedience, you're doing those things, he promises you will be supernaturally protected from most of these things, not persecution, but from the other things. And community, though, is a big way that happens. Okay, because if you're in a close-knit community of believers, you are going to take care of each other. We had a kind of brief view of it here recently, because we had a moment when a ton of the believers in my community were getting sick with COVID and other things, and a number of us had ivermectin already on hand, so we got it to them, and they got better, right? Yes. But Christians who aren't in community aren't going to have anybody looking out for them. Right. And that is what the final stage is. So I would recommend that when the EMP hits and the electricity goes out, and you see that it's going to be out for an extended period of time, that is the time to retreat to the countryside, because the invasion, don't know how long it'll be after that before the invasion happens. Okay.
Mhm.
It may not be very long at all. It might be the full 6 to 8 months. I don't really know how long, but I do know that we're going to need that much food. But then after that, after the invasion happened, what they do is they sweep across the whole country, and until they get to DC and completely destroy our politicians and all the rats in Washington, D.C. And then they begin genocide. And their goal, Russia and China's goal, is not to conquer and dominate the United States. It's to remove all of the American people from its soil.
Purge.
Purge, yeah. So some of them, so many are put in concentration camps and either killed there or moved to ships where they're shipped off to other countries where they're sold as slaves. And then others are killed in the country. And the Christians now, but there remains communities of Christians. There seems to remain a number of isolated communities of Christians that still live in the land, and they're all migrating on foot towards the Midwest. That's why I believe the Midwestern U.S. is the last refuge, because so many people have seen this kind of walking migration of Christians in community towards the center of the country. And they keep each other alive, basically.
Mm-hmm. With regard to, after with the invasion, do you see that lining up with Dmitry Dudelman and some of the other prophets that speak about China attacking on the West Coast and the Russians attacking on the East Coast?
He is
and
not
also, just one last thing. You had also mentioned that you saw them not just focusing on America, but a lot of the other NATO countries, and there was like a simultaneous attack. And I'm guessing all of that would kind of be nuclear and with EMPs and all of that as well, to kind of destroy the infrastructure and the status quo, the way things have been.
And that is one thing. So yes, so many people have seen that. Russia from the west, China from the west, Russia from the east. So many people have seen Russia using what's called a tsunami bomb off our eastern coast, which is a nuclear weapon that creates an 800-foot tidal wave, which floods a lot of Florida, North Carolina, and New York City. We've seen Russia also come in from the northwest. A lot of these details that have been seen are very consistent. And yet there's also a bunch of people that have seen nuclear weapons hitting all our major cities. So, but then there's also dreams that have seen Obama in charge in DC and in the UN and really persecuting believers like crazy, and just pogroms, just killing people. So I've been trying to organize those and figure out what is the order of this. And I think what it is, so Obama is basically, I believe, going to be the Antichrist of America. He's not, I don't think he's the little horn of Daniel, but as for all intents and purposes, for us, he's going to be like the Antichrist. And I think the Russian-China invasion, this is my best piecing together of all of it, is I believe that Russia and China come in order to restore him to power initially, and then there is this massive persecution of believers and anybody that would oppose him, and that is happening at the same time that the mark of the beast is being implemented. And if you pay attention to the text of Revelation, it's the false prophet and the whore of Babylon, basically the anti-church, that is the primary entity pushing the mark of the beast on people. So I believe that phase with him in DC is like that mark of the beast period of time. And then then after that, at some point, I believe that the nuclear bombs hit all of our cities. That's the sudden hour. That's how the United States falls in an hour. Babylon falls in 1 hour by fire. That is the moment all the nuclear weapons hit all of the American cities. And I believe that is going to happen right after the rapture.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that for sure.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask you one other thing, since you brought up the tidal waves and a tsunami bomb. I had seen, and I don't remember exactly where this piece of information, but I had seen about how different false flag events and how they had created a pentagram across the United States, and that there were these different points that had been fulfilled, like with the Oklahoma City bombing, the Pentagon, the 9/11 up there in New York, these different facets of this particular pentagram as it was sketched out across the United States. And there was one leg that was missing, and that was there in Florida. And it seemed to be, I don't know, Miami or somewhere down there in Florida, that this one last portion of this leg, this pentagram, was yet to be fulfilled. And it was also decoded on the currency. I think it was a $20 bill, a few times back before, because they've been changing the money. But the currency, when you fold it a certain way, it has depictions on it of these bombings. What occurred in Washington, D.C. with the Pentagon being hit, and also with the towers falling in 9/11. But there's also a depiction of waves cresting and coming over buildings. And if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, I'll try to put links in the description and send you that information.
Yeah, send that to me, because
absolutely fascinating with what we're
I am familiar with the pentagram layout of DC and all that. The Masonic Lodge is involved in a lot of those things, and there's other symbolism too. Like there's a lot of weird symbolism underneath the arch in St. Louis, and I've kind of wondered about the position of that arch in line with the Washington Monument and other things like that. But false flags specifically. Well, I do know, one thing, the Horde Babylonites religion, right? And they do a lot of rituals, and their purpose of these occult rituals is to engage with ascended spirit masters, which are essentially demons. And they believe that I think they think they're aliens, either from another dimension or another planet.
Right.
But they think that they're doing this to get power. And they are actually interacting with these spiritual forces, but we know that these spiritual forces are evil. But through that, they have seen visions too. They have seen things about the future. They've been told things about the future. Because the devil usually mixes lies with truth. So he will show them certain things that are true, and then those happen, and then that builds their trust that yes, we're getting the truth out of this source, and they don't realize they're just being deceived. That was given so that they would trust and trust these demons. But
right.
One of Dana Coverstone's dreams, he saw a meeting in what's that room in the White House? Where they, it's not a war room, but I'm trying to remember the name of it. But it's the underground room where they go to discuss war plans and things at the White House. Well, regardless, he saw that room, and there was generals around the table, and they were talking about 3 different false flag events that they had planned. And I'm anticipating that. I think as soon as you see the news start to go very much in favor of exposing the darkness, maybe the election fraud, maybe other things, that's when they're going to do at least one of the false flags, because they do those things to distract, and to reclaim the narrative. And other people that have seen this, have seen the first one, it seems like there may be something coming that's a false flag that is going to be very heinous, very bad. And it's going to make conservatives look so bad that basically the Republican Party just shuts up and stops talking. Like they're so intimidated by it, by what happened, like feeling like they're culpable, they're guilty of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think after that, the truth will be exposed and there's going to be massive arrests. And that is why conservatives are so angry, because in the Lincoln dream, Abraham Lincoln has been beaten up a little bit and his left arm is in a sling and in the dream. And this is right before the national divorce. And your arm is a symbol for power. So that arm being a sling means that the power of the left has been wounded, has been broken, right? Is what that would symbolically mean. So I think that there are going to be some false flags, but I think they're going to be exposed, and then that causes conservatives to get furious and demand the national divorce, and the liberals agree with it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think is going to happen. But that's, again, my best educated guess.
Uh-huh.
So if it plays out differently, I tried my best.
Well, I mean, things are happening and progressing, and all you can do is kind of gauge it from what you're seeing. But,
Yes.
We appreciate at least that you're looking, and that you're trying to interpret and you're trying to help people to understand. I mean, that's a rare thing. And as far as you had said with Dana, as far as some of the dreams that he has of late, can you talk about just what he's been seeing, or any other major people that you keep up with that has been kind of accurate with their dreaming, and what kind of stuff you see coming through them specifically?
I'm personally growing more confident. Like probably every time you speak with me, I think you're going to hear me a little more confident, because I'm cautious by nature. I actually try, contrary to, I'm making a lot of claims here tonight, but contrary to what that sounds, I'm not actually a sensationalist. I'm just open to all possibilities, but I try to really analyze data scientifically. And, if you see things and you make predictions and those come true, then it tells you you're on the right track.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, I'm batting like about 95% on what I've predicted for the past 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's pretty good.
And that's getting me that's making me very confident that I'm probably right about the things that are coming next.
And
as far as
you're getting the technique down, as far as being able to look and to see and to interpret.
Yes, and as far as Dana Coverstones, the ones that I felt like were very important, like if you go search my channel, I've done an amplified interpretation of his mud dream, which I thought is very important. That one is about many Christians walking away from the faith because they're disappointed when they don't see the revival that they expected and the blessings they expected. And the Christians that remain are migrating towards the center of the country. So I would definitely recommend watching that. If you're a believer who is feeling tired, you've been running a race and you're getting tired, go watch the amplified interpretation I do of the flaming spear dream on my channel, because in there you'll see how it ends and how your race ends, and if you're running for Christ, you'll see that he's going to lift you up and re-energize you at the end. The plumb line dream, trying to remember if I think I did do an amplified interpretation of that one on my channel. But if not, just go watch it on Coverstone's channel. But that one is important to understand the order of the shakings. So in that dream, Jesus shakes Wall Street, and then he shakes the Capitol building in D.C., and then he shakes the church. And these are very violent shakings he does, and it's Jesus doing them. But the order there is the financial shaking first, then the political shaking, then the shaking of the church. And I would urge all believers to be ready for that shaking of the church, because that is probably going to look like a lot of scandals. And it's going to hurt people's faith if you're not ready for it. But what it is Jesus is cleaning up his church, right? I think another important one is the Franklin dream. The Franklin dream really has a happy ending because it shows that what God is doing through all of these hardships is he's got us in his hand, and we're enduring high pressure and heat, but he's turning us into diamonds. Right, he's separating the trash from the diamonds. And but to make a diamond requires a lot of pressure. Right. So I'm trying to see if there's the testing floor dream is a really good one to get inspiration. That one is about the rapture. And awesome. I would watch that. Those. Yeah.
What was the name of that one again?
That's the testing floor.
Testing floor, okay.
Yeah, that was his 26th dream.
Okay, sort of like a threshing floor, huh?
Yeah, and there's a newer one he had that was about 3 different colored dragons, red, white, and blue dragons, and I'm still praying through that one, trying to think through it. I know that the interpretation Cherie Goff gave on that one is not right at all, but I'm still trying to. I understand some of it pretty well, but there's a few details I'm not settled on. I'm trying to understand them. So when I fully get a full understanding of that one, I'm going to post an interpretation of it.
Right on. Who is Cherie Goff?
So that's a friend of Dana Coverstone's that he brings on. She's he feels like she's a gifted at dream interpretation.
Okay, right on.
And she does pretty good, but she's just not. She spiritualizes things too much, and also does not understand how God uses symbolism in nature. And the only reason I feel like I do understand that is because God took me through quite a process when I wrote my nature book on understanding exactly that. So that's a big help for me in trying to interpret these things.
Well, we are down to the end. I want to give you a chance to give out all of your contact, your YouTube channel once more. And also, are you coming on at any specific time and doing shows, or just relaying interpretations and when you have answer?
The main way people can keep updated is through YouTube. That's the only channel I'm really doing right now. I'm very busy with, I have multiple businesses I oversee, plus the ministry. And
the name of the YouTube channel again?
It just search Zack Mason, Z-A-C-K.
Okay, under
Mason,
your name.
and I'm the first one. You'll see the icon of my book showing up there. Yep.
Okay, great. All right. Well, hey, Zack, we appreciate you coming on and joining us, especially on such short notice, and appreciate your interpretations and sharing. And we'll just keep praying for, all the citizens of the world, the believers, myself, yourself, our families, our loved ones, our children, everybody to be safe, to be under God's grace and protected, and also to be discerning in these times, and also to use the time in preparation, as you had mentioned previously. But we greatly appreciate you, as always.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Zen. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we'll touch base again sometime soon and check in with you again very soon. Where people go to find your books?
So you can get my books on Amazon, or you can contact Liberty Books in Lawrenceville, and they've got them in stock as well. They can always ship them to you. But yeah, they're available in pretty much any bookstore and online. And if you want a fun read, the novel I just released a little while ago is called Aiden Song, and I love that book. That's my favorite book I think I've ever written, just because it's such a great story.
Right on, Aiden Song.
Yep.
All right, brother. We appreciate you. Thank
sir.
you, everyone.
Right,
Thanks,
bye-bye.
everyone, for joining us. Be blessed, brother. And
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this video and this broadcast. We appreciate all of you, and thank you for your patronage. Please do like and subscribe and share with your friends. God bless all of you in your seeking.